Hello and welcome to A.G.Zone. In this video, we'll be discussing about the exchange of gases. What are the different factors which result in the exchange of gases? Let's start with our main organ, which is alveoli. Alveoli are the primary site for exchange of gases. Exchange of gases also occur between blood and tissue. O2 and CO2 are the gases which are mainly exchanged in these sites by simple diffusion. Here you know that blood gets oxygenated in alveoli and gets deoxygenated while it is in the tissues. The exchange of gases simply happens because of diffusion between the layers of alveoli and capillaries, but there are other factors also involved in this. Let's discuss about these factors. First up, we have pressure and concentration gradient. Pressure contributes a lot in diffusion. Initially, the partial pressure. Second, we have solubility of gases. How much soluble is a gas in a particular type of liquid? And at last, we have the thickness of membrane. Thickness of membrane is just inversely proportional to the gas diffused. Now, before moving further, let's first discuss what is partial pressure. Partial pressure of a gas can be defined as the pressure contributed by an individual gas in a mixture of gases. Suppose we have a box and we have two different kinds of gases, gas 1 or gas 2. These two gases exerts different amount of pressure on the walls of container, but the total pressure of container will be by adding up the pressure of these individual gases. If we have to denote the partial pressure of any gas, we just write a small p in front of the name of the gas. The two main gases which we'll be discussing about are the respiratory gases O2 and CO2. Now let's see their partial pressure at various sites. Rg means respiratory gas O2 and CO2. In the atmospheric air, O2 has a partial pressure of 159 and CO2 of 0.3 mm per Hg respectively. In alveoli, the pressure is 104 and 40. In deoxygenated blood, it is 40 for O2 and 45 for CO2. And in oxygenated blood, it is 95 for O2 and 40 for CO2. In tissues, it is around 40 for O2 and around 45 for CO2. Here we can see a trend that is from atmosphere to alveoli, alveoli to blood and blood to tissues. The pressure keep on decreasing for oxygen and vice versa. The pressure keep on decreasing in the opposite direction for CO2. That make diffusion of these gases easy. Now let's come to our second point, which is solubility of gases. As the solubility of CO2 is much higher than that of O2, so CO2 is more soluble, approximately 20 to 25 times more soluble than oxygen. Now let's talk about our third point, which is layers of diffusion. We have mainly three layers of diffusion. First, we have squamous epithelium, which is present in alveoli, and next up we have endothelium of alveolar capillaries. As you may have suggested, it is from the alveolar capillaries, and between these two layers we have the basement substance, which is present in between them, and air also has to pass through this basement substance. Now let's see their position in diagram. This is an alveoli and this is the layer of squamous epithelium in the alveoli. Below this we have the endothelium, which is of alveolar capillary, and between these two we have the basement membrane. The combined thickness of all these three is much less than a millimeter. Therefore, all the factors in our body are favorable for the diffusion of O2 from alveoli to tissues and CO2 from tissues to alveoli. Now let's talk about transport of gases. How do gases really transport? Blood is the medium by which gases transport in the body. Our main gases O2 and CO2 also transport by blood. Now let's see by which component of blood do they really transport. RBCs help in transport of gases. Approximately 97% of oxygen is transported by RBCs and rest 3% is transported by blood plasma, whereas 20 to 25% by RBC and 7% by blood plasma in case of CO2. Now here you may wonder how rest of the carbon dioxide is transported in blood. Here 20 to 25% by RBCs and 7% by blood plasma, and rest the remaining carbon is transported in form of carbonate directly to its required position. Now let's talk about oxygen dissociation curve, or we can say it as sigmoid curve. In the x-axis of this curve we have partial pressure of oxygen in mm per Hg, and in the y-axis we have percentage saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen. Here you can clearly see that as the pressure increases, the percentage saturation of oxygen also increases, and this graph can be used to determine the effect of partial pressure of carbon dioxide, hydrogen ion concentration and temperature on oxygen. Now let's talk about condition for oxyhemoglobin, or the conditions required for the formation of oxyhemoglobin. There are four factors which are required, which are partial pressure of oxygen, carbon dioxide, hydrogen ion concentration and temperature. When the partial pressure of oxygen is high and rest is low, it is the ideal condition for formation of oxyhemoglobin. And in tissues, when these all factors are reversed, it is the ideal condition for the formation of carbonic hemoglobin, which is the CO2 attached with hemoglobin. CO2 is attached with hemoglobin as carbonic hemoglobin, and it is around 20 to 25% of CO2 carried in this form, with the ideal condition when the partial pressure of oxygen is low and the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high. But for the formation of carbonic hemoglobin, an enzyme is required which is present in hemoglobin, named carbonic anhydrase. It is also present in plasma in minute quantities. With the help of this carbonic anhydrase, a reaction takes place which is a reversible reaction in which CO2 and water reacts to form H2CO3. H2CO3 further reacts to give us carbonic which is HCO3 and hydrogen ion H positive. The place where this reaction occurs is in our muscles. As I have told you earlier, this reaction is reversible. So same reaction is carried out in the reverse order in our lungs to release out carbon dioxide and water. So it will be like HCO3 plus H ion will give you H2CO3, and H2CO3 will further reacts in presence of carbonic anhydrase to give you CO2 and water. Now one bonus fact, it is that 100 ml of oxygenated blood can provide you with 5 ml of oxygen, and same with carbon dioxide, 100 ml of deoxygenated blood can provide you with 4 ml of carbon dioxide. That was all for this video. If you like this video, consider subscribing.